I used to think that detachment was strength, that being unmoved, untouched, unshaken was the mark of spiritual mastery. I watched people grieve, rage, collapse, and I sat still. I told myself, I am beyond this. But deep inside, something was cracking. Detachment, as I first understood it, was a kind of armor. I wore it well, quiet, calm, serene. But beneath the surface, my heart was turning to stone. I wasn't free. I was frozen. In the name of letting go, I stopped feeling. In the name of non-attachment, I abandoned love. In the name of the path, I buried my pain and called it peace. How did this happen? How did the Dharma, a path of awakening, become a shield against being human? Where did I confuse emptiness with emptiness of emotion? Where did I learn that to be spiritual is to be numb? It's a quiet tragedy, one that happens in temples, in retreats, in meditation halls around the world. A young seeker sits in pain, but instead of facing it, he watches it. He repeats the mantras. He names it impermanent. He labels it not self. He tells himself, let it go, and he succeeds. But what he lets go of isn't the pain, it's his capacity to feel it. This is the shadow of detachment. Not freedom, but flight. Not peace, but paralysis. Not wisdom, but withdrawal. I don't speak these words to blame. I speak them because I walked that road, and it took me years to understand what I'd lost. Not just emotions, but the raw, wild, beautiful chaos of being alive. There's a difference between clinging and caring, between obsession and presence, between drowning in sorrow and holding it with grace. True detachment is not indifference. It is the ability to let love move through you without needing to own it. It is the strength to face grief without being consumed. It is the maturity to let things come and go, not because you don't feel, but because you do. But I didn't know that, not at first. So I sat in silence, day after day, convincing myself that the absence of reaction was the same as the presence of wisdom. It wasn't. At first, it feels like progress. You're no longer shaken by heartbreak. You're no longer moved by loss. You sit, watch, breathe, and call it equanimity. But there's a silence beneath the silence, a silence that doesn't soothe, a silence that doesn't see, a silence that only hides. You learn to say, this too shall pass. You tell yourself, no self, no suffering. You close your eyes and repeat, all is impermanent. And yet, the ache in your chest never really goes away. You've just stopped listening to it. I called it detachment, but it was disconnection. I called it wisdom, but it was escape. I called it peace, but it was the absence of being present. There's a kind of emptiness that liberates you, and another that devours you. When you confuse them, you begin to hollow out, not in the enlightened way, but in the emotionally amputated way. I remember looking at people I once loved and feeling nothing. Not anger, not affection, not pain, just silence. I told myself, this is what freedom feels like. But it wasn't freedom. It was fatigue, the soul's exhaustion from years of numbing itself in the name of spirituality. This is the paradox. The more I tried to become nobody, the more I disappeared from my own life. When the teachings are misunderstood, when detachment becomes denial, we don't transcend the ego, we just repress it. It hides in shadows, shapes itself into a spiritual mask, and whispers, you're above all this. But I wasn't above it. I was buried under it. So many seekers suffer like this, and they think they're doing it right, because they're calm, because they don't cry, because they don't cling. but inside they're unraveling. The Dharma was never meant to make us invulnerable. It was meant to make us free. And freedom means feeling, even when it hurts. It's strange how terrifying it can be to feel again. After years of detachment, of holding the world at arm's length, of numbing what once made me human, returning to emotion felt like walking through fire. The first time I let sadness rise, it cracked something open in me. I didn't analyze it. I didn't label it dukkha. I didn't call it just a thought. I just let it ache. And I wept. Not like a monk, not like a master, but like a child remembering what it means to be alive. For the first time in years, my heart made a sound. It didn't chant. It didn't recite sutras. It simply trembled. And in that trembling, there was truth. You cannot truly let go of what you haven't fully held. And I had never held my grief, my longing, my love. I had studied it, observed it, meditated on it, but I had never embraced it. This is the forgotten part of the path, integration, to awaken the mind, but also return to the body, to see through illusion, but also honor sensation, to dissolve the ego, but not destroy the heart. There is a detachment that comes from fear, and there was a detachment that arises from wisdom. They look the same from the outside, but they feel very different within. One says, I refuse to feel. The other says, I trust myself to feel, without drowning. One hides, the other holds. One shuts down, the other opens wide. When I began to feel again, I discovered that I didn't need to cling to be connected. That tears didn't mean regression, they meant remembrance. That love, even if impermanent, was worth letting in. The Buddha didn't teach us to transcend our humanity. He taught us how to embrace it without attachment. And that difference is everything. So I let the sadness in. I let the beauty in. I let the fear in. Not to hold it forever, but to finally, fully meet it. And then let it go from a place of love, not avoidance. It's easy to believe you're detached when nothing touches you anymore. You sit straight. You breathe slow. You speak softly. You smile with calmness that looks like wisdom. But sometimes it's just a mask, a spiritual persona built not on insight, but on avoidance. I know this mask well. I wore it for years. It was made of silence, but not the deep silence of awareness. The silence of fear. Fear of anger. Fear of grief. Fear of being human. It told me I was advanced, that I'd moved past all this, that emotion was for those still stuck in samsara. But the truth is, I hadn't transcended anything. I had just buried it deeper. The spiritual ego is snaky. It doesn't seek fame or pleasure. It seeks purity. It wants to be the one who's above it all, untouched, unattached, enlightened. But secretly, it feeds on comparison. I don't cry like them. I'm not reactive like them. I've let go. They haven't. It builds an identity around non-identity. And so the ego survives. But now it chants sutras. It hides behind robes, behind malas, behind phrases like, just observe and let it pass. When detachment becomes performance, when stillness becomes a script, we haven't found freedom. We've just polished the chains. I once told myself, I don't suffer anymore. But the truth was darker. I had just forgotten how to feel. And I call that forgetting liberation. There's a reason the Buddha taught the middle way. Because extremes are always seductive, even in spiritual life. Extreme renunciation, extreme equanimity, extreme denial of the self. But the path to awakening is not about being extreme. It's about being honest. Honest enough to see when our stillness is real and when it's a disguise. So I began to peel it back. The smile, the posture, the quiet superiority. I let myself be human again. I let the tears fall. I let the voice shake. I let the heart beat without restraint. And in that trembling, there was more truth than in all my meditations. They told me to let go, so I did. They told me not to cling, so I didn't. They told me pain is impermanent, so I waited for it to pass. But no one told me that I can hold things gently and still be free. I thought freedom meant never feeling too deeply. But then I realized, what if real liberation isn't the absence of feeling, but the mastery of how we carry it? What if I could feel everything without letting it own me? This is the middle way. To cry without drowning, to love without losing yourself, to be moved deeply and still remain unmoved at the core, not cold, not numb, but anchored. I remember the first time I felt heartbreak after years of detachment. It hit like thunder, but something had changed. I didn't collapse. I didn't cling. I breathed. I bowed. I let the ache move through me like wind through an open window. And when it left, something inside me remained more whole, not less. This is the paradox of the path. True detachment isn't sterile. It isn't dry. It isn't passive. It is fierce, compassionate, alive. It means holding a dying friend's hand and not turning away. It means watching your hopes dissolve and not shutting down. It means meeting joy without needing it to last. Detachment is not a wall. It's a doorway. And if you use it to run from life, you've misunderstood the map. The Buddha didn't teach escape. He taught understanding. He didn't teach suppression. He taught skillful seeing. And nowhere did he say you must stop feeling in order to be free. The middle way is terrifying because it asks you to stand in fire without being burned, to open your arms to the world without grabbing it, to let love pour through you without trying to possess it. And when you do, something miraculous happens. You realize you were never meant to be untouched by life. You were meant to touch it fully, then bow, then let go. Not because you don't care, but because you finally do. Not all silence is sacred. Not all detachment is wisdom. And not all Dharma is used as it was meant to be. I've seen it. You've seen it. Maybe you've even lived it. Where teachings meant to liberate are used instead to avoid, dismiss, suppress. A woman breaks down in grief and is told, it's just attachment. A man feels anger after injustice and is told, that's your ego. A child trembles with fear and is told to observe it like it's some passing cloud. This isn't awakening. This is bypass. We throw teachings like bandages on wounds that need touch. We quote sutras instead of holding space. We chant instead of listening. And slowly, without knowing, we turn the Dharma into a shield against discomfort. But the Buddha didn't look away from suffering. He walked right into it. He sat under that tree not to escape pain, but to understand it, to meet it fully, to end it skillfully, not deny it. We forget. Detachment is not indifference. It's not the absence of feeling. It's the ability to feel without falling apart. But in our rush to seem spiritual, we amputate the heart. There's a kind of false detachment that's actually just fear in disguise. Fear of vulnerability, fear of chaos, fear of being human. So we cling to mantras, we cling to posture, we cling to ideas of non-self, and in doing so, we create a new self, the one who doesn't feel, the one who has let go. But that self is just another illusion. True Dharma does not invalidate pain. It sees through it by going into it. It doesn't say, don't cry. It says, see clearly what the tears reveal. It doesn't say, rise above emotion. It says, let emotion rise, then know its nature. Because only by walking through the fire can we understand that the fire isn't what burns us. Clinging is, and suppression is just another form of clinging. Somewhere along the path, I lost my heart. Not because I became cruel, but because I became cold. Not out of malice, but out of discipline, out of a desire to do it right. I followed every instruction. I watched every thought. I sat with every sensation. But I forgot to feel. I mistook numbness for clarity, emptiness for peace, distance for equanimity, and I called that awakening. But true awakening doesn't cut you off from life. It connects you so deeply you see through its illusions without losing its beauty. It's when you can hold a dying leaf and weep, not because you cling, but because you see its sacred impermanence. The heart that detachment forgot is the heart that still feels the world, even as it knows it cannot own it. It's the heart that sees a child suffer and doesn't say, that's karma, but bends to lift them anyway. It's the heart that hears of war and doesn't respond with doctrine, but with tears and silence and prayer. Sometimes, in our search for peace, we amputate the very thing that makes us human. But the Buddha never asked for that. He asked for freedom, not from feeling, but from the illusion that feeling defines you. You can feel and still be free. You can love and still let go. You can hurt and still be whole. The lotus grows from mud, not from denial of mud, but from living in it, fully, honestly, openly. And your heart, the very one you were told to silence, is the doorway to that kind of freedom. Not a problem, not a hindrance, but the key to compassion that sees clearly and still chooses to care. There comes a moment when the path asks you to do the hardest thing of all, to let go of even your detachment, not to fall back into clinging, but to finally realize you never had to close your heart to open your mind. We confuse spiritual maturity with emotional distance, but the deepest masters are not the coldest. They are the most tender, because only the strong can afford to be soft. Real letting go isn't about turning your back on life. It's about turning toward it without fear. It's about walking through joy, sorrow, love, and loss, and holding them all like birds in an open palm. They come, they go. You don't cage them. You don't chase them. You just bow. This is not apathy. This is sacred courage, to remain open in a world that wounds, to remain honest in a mind that wants to escape, to remain kind even when it hurts. I used to think enlightenment would make me untouchable, but now I see it made me more touchable than ever, because I can cry without drowning. I can love without needing. I can let go without going numb. The Buddha didn't teach us to be stone. He taught us to be sky. The sky holds every cloud, every storm, every sunrise. It doesn't cling. It doesn't resist. It just remains vast, free. So if you're wondering whether you're suppressing or awakening, ask yourself this. Can you still feel? Can you still care? Can you still say yes to life, even when it doesn't go your way? If the answer is yes, you're not escaping. You're evolving, not away from life, but deeper into it. And that is true detachment. Not a wall, not an escape, but a doorway into freedom that feels.